So I'm here to talk about emerald ash borer and also some tools on how to manage this pest. And then also I'm going to talk about some apps that we developed at Purdue to help you manage other pests in different crops. So I'm going to do a little bit of background information on emerald ash borer before I get going to catch everyone up to speed. Emerald ash borer is an invasive beetle that came over from China. It was discovered in 2002 in Detroit, Michigan, but it was likely around for about 10 years prior to that, and then it just took us 10 years to realize that it was in the area. It kills trees by feeding on the vascular tissue here in the cambium and phloem, what moves the nutrients throughout the tree, and essentially girdles the tree and starves it to death after repeated infestations. It only attacks true ash species, so it doesn't attack mountain ash, but blue ash, white ash, green ash, black ash are all susceptible. Approximately 99.9% of untreated ash trees will die. You heard a guy earlier talked about that he saw a couple ash trees that were in really good condition, looked like they were healthy trees surrounded by an area of dead ash trees. Those are the few that escaped the 99.9% death rate, but I wouldn't roll the dice in a client's yard and say that it's probably going to get through the invasion wave, because I highly doubt it will. Here's the first larval stage, second larval stage, third larval stage. And this is how quickly it kills trees. This is 2006 in Toledo, Ohio, pretty early on in the invasion wave, and just 3 years later, not a single leaf on any of these trees. And just for clarification, that's a maple. So that maple's fine, obviously. But I really like this picture because it shows how impactful emerald ash borer is and how devastating it is to communities. So I already mentioned that it kills about 99.9% of trees, of ash trees. But we have some options on how to manage it. Individual trees we can either treat with an insecticide, one of the insecticides that are listed to kill emerald ash borer, or we can remove it, whether it's preventatively or once the tree dies we can remove it. That's pretty much it. And I'm an advocate for trees. I try and tell people to treat their trees if they can. You know, generally rule of thumb, if there's about 80% of canopy intact, you have a pretty good chance of saving that tree, and I encourage them to treat that tree. But you're going to sound very suspicious if you try and tell your clients that you can save the 15 ash trees in their woodlot behind their house, because that's just not financially responsible to invest that much money over a decade of treating these trees. Their bill's going to be huge, so I don't recommend that. Unless you're treating Bill Gates' house. Is anybody here treating one of Bill Gates' estates? No? All right. If you ever do come across a billionaire that you're treating their house, let me know. I'd like to get in on that and maybe do some consulting. Also, it's pretty intuitive. Generating a management plan before emerald ash borer arrives is optimal. So some of you that don't have emerald ash borer in your area yet, start planning now. Start letting your clients know that there's ash trees. If you work on the golf course, start taking inventory of your ash trees so you know what you have. And keep in mind that trees do more than just provide beauty to the landscape. Have any of you guys seen this, the tree benefits calculator, before? It's a pretty cool tool. I like to use it to show the actual economic benefits that we get from trees. You just put in your location, the species of tree that you're working with, the size of the tree, and then whether it's in a residential area, a more industrial area, etc. And it spits out this little nifty chart that breaks down the economic benefits in dollars. So you can see that this 29-inch ash provides $219 every year. About half of that comes in stormwater removal, collects the stormwater. The other ones are reduces electricity and gas, increases property value, etc. And as it grows, it continues to increase property value and other economic benefits. So this is the current distribution of EAB. Can you guys see over there? Am I blocking anyone? Okay. Like I said before, it came in Detroit and some shipping materials and has slowly spread throughout. But many of you probably have heard of the campaign, "Don't Move Firewood, It Bugs Me." Some people aren't getting the message. As you can see here in Colorado, there's nothing here in Kansas, and all of a sudden something came up in Colorado. They don't fly that far. They only fly maximum 10 miles to find an ash tree, and when you run them in a lab in a wind tunnel, they only go about 2 miles. So it's very, very, very unlikely and pretty much impossible that EAB jumped from here to here all on its own. So people are still moving infested ash material and reestablishing new populations. So keeping that awareness alive and promoting the "don't move firewood" is a very good rule of thumb. Oh, and thus far, I found the statistic 60 million ash trees. I've also seen up in the 100 million ash trees already dead, but we can safely say it's killed tens of millions of ash trees, and there's a couple billion ash trees in all of North America that are at risk of EAB. So this is an invasion wave curve. It's a pretty basic model. EAB, this is the affected ash, and here's EAB right behind it. Every year we assume that once emerald ash borer is discovered in a county, the number of infected ash trees is going to double each year. And that's just a probability thing that a few scientists, like Cliff Sadoff and Deb McCauley and them, came up with. And so here you're early on in the invasion wave. It's pretty hard to detect EAB until about year 4 or 5, and then it just shoots up and kills the trees very quickly. You can go from 32% infestation to 2 years later, all 100% of the trees are infected. I just want to introduce this real quick too, because I'm going to refer back to it later. I apologize, I'm getting over a cold, so I gotta stay hydrated. My throat's drying out quickly. So before we can manage this pest, we have to understand its life cycle. So let's start here in the overwintering stage. It overwinters as a larva or a pupa, and in the springtime, around April, it'll start pupating and turning into an adult. It'll eventually emerge and start mating in late May, early June. It's going to be when black locusts are blooming. That's when these guys are flying, okay? They're going to fly and feed on the leaves of trees for 2 weeks before they lay eggs. That's very important. Keep that in mind. They're going to feed for 2 weeks before they lay eggs. They lay eggs through July, and through July through September, they're hatching into larvae and feeding again on the vascular tissue, creating this S-shaped damage just beneath the bark. Okay, jumping to the insecticides. We have 4 insecticides right now that we can use. Well, technically a 5th, but we usually don't use it because we can use a pyrethroid if we sprayed a really small tree, but we're not going to get into that because we just don't do it really. We have 2 neonics, the imidacloprid and the dinotephrine, emamectin benzoate, and a newer one, azadirachtin. It's not a new pesticide, but it's been recently labeled for emerald ash borer. The time of year to apply these things, imidacloprid you're going to want to do early spring, okay? Remember I told you that emerald ash borer flies for 2 weeks and feeds on leaves before it lays those eggs. That's its weak spot right there, 2 weeks of feeding on leaves. If we get imidacloprid in those leaves during that 2-week flight period, we're going to kill a lot of adults. Same with dinotephrine and emamectin benzoate, but emamectin benzoate's a little bit different because it has a 2-year residual, so it'll stay in that tree a little longer. But going back to the 2 neonics, they're a 1-year residual. Imidacloprid takes about 45 days to get into the leaves. So what does that tell you? We have to apply 45 days before the adults are flying, at least.
Direct injection into the trunk of the tree.
Injecting imidacloprid into the trunk of the tree, it'll take a little less time, but it's still not as water soluble as dinotephrine. Dinotephrine takes about 15 days to get into the leaves. I don't know the data On a trunk injection, actually I don't know if it's even been looked at, how long it takes.
24-hour window for saturation of the leaves.
Okay, yeah, see, I wasn't aware of that. Who'd you hear that from?
From the manufacturer.
From Pointer or Moget?
From Tree Tech.
Okay. But yeah, I don't know of any university studies that have shown how quickly it gets to the tree. But if you are doing a trunk injection with imidacloprid, apparently your window is much smaller, or much larger, because you don't have to hit it 45 days before. But if you're doing a soil injection, which these are the studies that are done by universities in like Colorado, Wisconsin, Purdue, Ohio State, the big names there, they use imidacloprid soil drenching, dimetaphyrin trunk sprays, dimetaphyrin soil injections, and then imectinib and azadirachtin trunk injections. So like I said, dimetaphyrin only takes about 15 days to go from soil to the leaves, and if you do a bark spray, it's even quicker. So if you're using the neonics and you're trying to manage this pest, and say it's early May and you're overwhelmed with something else and you just can't get to treating the trees, you can go ahead and use dimetaphyrin and still hit that adult flight period. Keep in mind, imidacloprid seems to be effective on trees up to 20 inches. After that, it loses its efficacy. And then also there's restrictions on how much we can apply in a per acre area. So no more than 128 inches, that's supposed to be a B, not an N, DBH, diameter breast height, only 128 cumulatively in 1 acre can be applied. Similarly with dimetaphyrin, we start losing efficacy of upwards to 23 inches. And actually if the tree is larger than 15 inches, you want to use the highest rate on that label for borers. And that's soil injection or a trunk spray. Same thing, no more than 104 inches DBH a tree can be treated per acre. And then benzoate, I alluded to this earlier, it's a 2-year residual, it's a trunk injection, there's multiple injection systems out there, and in fact Rainbow Tree has developed a whole new chemical, well not a whole new chemical, it's still benzoate, but it's their own formula, and they have their own injection system, so now we have both triage and the arbor jet systems, and now we also have what I forget the product's called, the ivermectin and their injection systems. So we're going to do spring injections. We'll kill the adults before their eggs are laid, similarly to how these two work. And if we do it later in the season, it'll kill next year's adult beetles, as well as some larvae, because there's some residual that is in the trunk of the tree.
You show 8 inches to 25 inches. What if you have a 4-foot tree? Is there any reason not to control use?
I'll get to that. Thank you. These are the data currently available, are trees up to 25 inches. It was hard for these researchers to find many large trees where they can get good statistical data. And so we do have these running, and I'll mention that later, but right now this is all they can recommend. And then azadirachtin, this is newer. This is on the pricier end. Same with this one. Imidacloprid is going to be the cheapest option. Again, though, you can apply this every other year, whereas these two have to be applied every year. Azadirachtin, you're going to apply early in the spring, and you're going to do it every year until peak activity. So I showed you that invasion wave. The first couple years you can get away with just doing it every other year, but when every tree in the area is affected or by emerald ash borer, you need to ramp that up to every year. And the way that azadirachtin kills these beetles is different than how the other three do it. Azadirachtin kills, it takes a lot of feeding because it's an insect growth regulator. And so the older adult females will lay non-viable eggs as they feed on leaves. Younger females will typically be able to get out of that. If they feed on leaves, they'll eventually be able to lay some viable eggs. And there's also some residual against the larvae. It'll kill the first instar larvae. but not the larger ones. Here's some examples. These are the neonics. I just put a couple up there. There's many others, but imidacloprid, I have Zytect and Merit up there. Dinotefran, I have Safari and Transtect. Now we have the ivermectins. We have imemectin benzoate, and that's our only chemical, but we have it in a triage formulation and ivermectin formulation. And then azadirachtin, it's an insect growth regulator, triazine. I'm sorry if there's any representatives here and I didn't mention you. I try to stay not biased towards anybody. These are all systemic insecticides. I've mentioned a lot of this already. Whether it's applied to the soil or to the trunk and directly, it goes up to the vascular system and gets disseminated throughout the canopy. And we have most of our kill against the adults as they're feeding during that flight period. But there is some residual in the trunk that kills, right beneath the bark, that kills the larvae. We have some data that suggests that. Imidacloprid kills the very small larvae, but not as they get larger. We call these L1, L2, and L3s just as they progress. Dinotefran actually kills small larvae and L2 larvae. Imemectin benzoate kills the first 2 stages, but we're not sure about the L3, similarly with dinotefran. And azadirachtin, we know that it kills the small larvae after sustained feeding, but not the L2. We're not sure about L2 and definitely not L3. As for adults, it takes sustained feeding to kill with imidacloprid, just a few bites with the dinotefran and imemectin benzoate, and then azadirachtin, it takes like 6 days. It's very sublethal, but it has a lot of adverse side effects that show up when they try and lay eggs. Do you have any questions up to this point on the insecticides?
Is azadirachtin injected, or how do you apply it?
Which one?
Azadirachtin.
Azadirachtin is injected. Okay, here's that wave I showed you earlier. I'm just going to give you a couple ideas on suggestions on how to manage it. You can do many different plans to manage emerald ash borer. I'm just thinking of one to reduce your costs, but early on in the invasion wave, if it's detected, say we just found it in the county, I'm just going to go ahead and start applying some neonics. They're pretty cheap. I can do it every year, so I can go back and see that tree again next year and keep checking it and making sure that it's okay. But as we progress in the invasion wave, I might want to step up to one of the imemectin benzoates and apply it every other year. Also keep in mind the size of these trees. If you are starting off with a even 25, 30-inch tree, you can probably get away with doing the neonics the first couple years, but you're definitely going to go up to imemectin benzoate later in the year. And then as the invasion wave moves through your area, you can probably fall back and go to the neonics again and start treating every year. But it's a lot cheaper, and you can back off after about 12 years or so and start doing every other year, maybe even every third year. It might become more of a maintenance issue. Because right now, a lot of what we're experiencing is just this massive invasion wave of emerald ash borer coming through, wiping out everything and moving on and dying off. And the only thing that will be left are the protected trees that we use insecticides on. So they're going up into Michigan right now and trying to survey the area and see if this model's viable, to see if this is actually what is happening. If populations are very declined, and we can start backing off on treatments. But because Detroit was hit so hard and they were not expecting it, a lot of their ash trees are gone, so they really don't have a lot of research that they can do. So they're going into other areas around there, that epicenter, and hopefully we'll have some data in the near future that shows what we can do in long term. If you want to use the azadirachtin, you would apply it early on every other year, and then as it progresses, you would go amp it up to every year. Okay, back to Guy's question about what about trees greater than 25 inches? Well, we do have some large tree studies underway, and actually this range is misskewed. There's a little skewed because there are some that are 60 inches that we're looking at too, and there's some very promising preliminary results. We just did the first year of data collection literally 2 weeks ago, and Cliff Sadoff, my academic advisor through my master's, he's still my boss, and he was working on getting that data figured out, and he's very excited what he saw. A lot of the treated trees look really good. We did both emamectin benzoate and the ivermectin, I keep forgetting that name, ivermectin and triage, and we compared those, and they're pretty much the same thing. And then we also just did triage at another site, and we have a lot of good data on that too. There's a lot less canopy dieback compared to the untreated control. So stay tuned.
Are you using the same rate like per diameter inch, or do you increase it for the big trees?
So, hold on, I'm trying to think back how they applied that. Because usually you increase as the tree gets bigger, it's like in sections, you would amp up to a higher rate when they're between this range or this range. And I think that they kept it steady for this research, for the research purposes. I think they kept it the same rate throughout per inch. But I'm not 100% certain on that. I would just assume that they would. I can talk to Cliff and send you that email though and give you that answer. So anybody that's going to be treating ash trees, come see me. I have the new insecticide bulletin. It just came out in June. It was assembled by all the best in the industry on emerald ash borer, and lots of good information. Everything I've mentioned up here about the insecticides is in here. So really, you didn't even need me to come talk. I could have just come handed you this bulletin and walked out, and it would have been the same thing. But so yeah, if you are going to treat emerald ash borer, come find me. I'll be leaving shortly after my talk because I got to go all the way back to Indy tonight. So come find me quickly after this. Okay, another tool that was created through Purdue was the EAB Cost Calculator. Has anybody seen this or used this? Awesome. What do you guys think?
Oh, it's great. I wish more people would use it.
There you go.
Yeah, people are idiots not to use it.
There you go. She just did my talk for me.
They're idiots.
Screaming at a brick wall. So you can find this at EAB Indiana.info. This is the Purdue extension page, and right here we have it, the EAB Cost Calculator. Okay, so quickly, what it does, it's driven by that model I showed you earlier, the EAB invasion wave model. It takes about 8 years for EAB to kill the ash trees. And you can stage your response based on percentage of ash trees that are dying. You can evaluate management plans post-invasion wave and compare cumulative versus annual costs over 25 years. You compare size of forest over a 25-year period, and it generates a nicely organized report for you when you're done. What you need to use the calculator, first and foremost, is an inventory. Even if you're not going to use the calculator, I highly suggest you get an inventory. This will tell you what you're going up against. Some people might think, oh, I've managed this golf course, I've seen ash trees out there, I'm saying there's probably about 20, and they go out there and do an inventory and they go, oh, there's actually closer to 100. I can't afford the treatment costs now because I under budgeted. It's kind of like a boxer going into a fight not knowing what his opponent is. You know, the guy ends up having a 6-inch reach on him and he's in big trouble. He wasn't prepared for that. It's similar to that. This is the first step in managing any EAB or any EAB situation ash forest. Also, you can input the estimate of cost for removing and treating trees. We do have an average built into the model, but if you know what your specific numbers are, use those because it's going to give you a more accurate output. And also the cost of replacing each tree. And then you can select up to 3 management options to compare at a time, but there's a lot more there, and I'll show you that in a second. One is treat all with insecticides, one is remove all, One is replace all with resistant trees, etc. This is an example that I did for a webinar a while back. I just plugged in some random tree sizes here. What do I got? I got 5 trees at 3 to 6 inches, 25 at 6 to 12, etc. And once you have that all done, you can either you can view your plant comparisons, or you can go to customized costs and infestation stage, which is what I was saying. If you know your specific numbers, you would go there and put those figures in so you get more accurate output. Here's a list of all of your options. So you can remove all, replace all, treat all, remove unsafe ash. So you're just going to remove them as they begin to fail. This replace unsafe is remove and replace unsafe ash. Replace anything that's greater than 12 inches, less than 12 inches, less than 24. Save the best 50%, etc. Urban slam. This is a concept done brought forth by Deb McCulloch. It's a really cool idea. She ran this computer model that showed that if you treat 40% of ash trees in a given area, I forget the area because I read the paper like 3 years ago, but if you treat 40% of the trees, you'll save all of them if you randomly treat every year. So this is kind of something we just threw in here for fun. We're trying to replicate that in the real world. Stay tuned. Hopefully we have results soon. So for this example, I just selected these 3, which is replace as they become unsafe, replace all right away, or treat all. And then this is the graph that it'll spit out. So I should have made this larger for you guys, but the black line is the replace unsafe ash. So you're going to start, this is replacing as they become unsafe. Replace all, which is over the first 8 years. You're just going to I'm going to take out X amount each year and replace them with a resistant tree, or treat all. The treat all option is usually not realistic either, because you aren't going to necessarily go in and treat every single ash tree. You're not going to treat the one that has, girdling roots, sidewalks on both sides, going into power lines, things like that, or where construction has recently been, things where the roots might be compromised. It would be dumb to invest in a tree that is on its way out anyway. So this is not realistic, but it was just a basic thing I wanted to throw in there. So this is the annual cost up above, and this is the cumulative cost below. So annually, you're going to spend down here for treating all, and then after about 14 years, I went ahead and did every other year I'm going to treat. So that's what this is. This is as they become unsafe. So after 8 years, this will really break someone's budget, but if they can afford it in year 8 and they plan ahead, why not, I guess. And this is remove as you go. Here's the cumulative cost. So you can see that the treat all ends up being more in the long run after 25 years. In fact, at year 17, it surpasses the other 2 options. But here we can see our canopy with our treat all option is much higher than the other 2. The other 2 aren't even back to the original canopy after 25 years. So this right here is just DBH over time. DBH is directly correlated to canopy. We can make that relationship. So a lot of times this is what I show people. Yeah, it's cheaper maybe in the long run to remove all your trees, but look, you have no canopy, and I showed you that slide earlier about the economic benefits that trees provide. So they're losing those numbers too. And these are just some nice little graphs that you can play around with, or tables you can play around with at the end that show you what you're spending each year, or what you're spending each year, and the size distribution of your ash trees in your community. Okay, so now that I told you the concept, this is a real world example of a neighborhood in just south of Indianapolis that use the cost calculator, and neighborhoods are awesome. If you're already managing a few clients in a neighborhood, I would strongly try and infiltrate a homeowner association. If they have a homeowners association, start working with them. Be proactive about it. They might, gain their trust and let them know, like, I can do this at a discount rate. I'm doing all these trees for you. That's a lot of business. And you might also start getting other jobs throughout the community. People see you there every day, treating their trees, or looking at the trees, evaluating the trees. They're going to say, oh yeah, X and X lawn care, tree care, whatever company in there. Throughout our neighborhood, I saw them, I need my maple tree pruned, and I'll just call them and have them come do it. So it's a good way to gain more business. So what they had was they had 600 treatable trees. So they discounted the ones that were not going to be treatable, like I mentioned earlier, the ones with girdling roots, etc. And they averaged about 9 inches DBH, and there's 222 homeowners. Okay? Option A, remove and replace everything. Option B, protect all. This was their quote. $54 per homeowner per year. Great deal to save 600 trees. $300 per homeowner over 12 years. And you're gonna have a 15-inch tree after that 12-year period. They went with that option, and this is what their trees look like. Excuse me. This was in the fall, so that's why there's the discoloration and a little bit of leaf drop, but they're perfectly healthy still. They have a great canopy rather than removing all and having little trees. My grandma up in Fort Wayne, her neighborhood looks like a joke. It's a whole bunch of little oaks and cherries, and I mean now they finally have some diversity, but they lost all of their beautiful ash trees, and they just sat there as hazards for years because they didn't have a budget to remove those trees. So they just sat there as hazards, waiting to fall on a car, fall on somebody, and be a lawsuit. This is what they used when they inputted all their information. They actually were going to, after 25 years, be less. They're going to be under the cost for replacing and removing these two options. Cumulatively, you can see that this year would have broke their budget. They're looking at almost $100,000 in 1 year if they went with that remove unsafe ash. So this is spreading out your costs. Over a longer period of time, you're spreading out your costs. You have a bigger canopy in the end, and in some instances, it's actually cheaper overall. That's what they experienced in Equal Trace. Here you can see they have a much bigger canopy. If they did these other two options in 25 years, they're just now getting back up there. And again, showing you the National Benefit Calculator. That canopy being higher than the other canopy, 600 ash trees being larger, that's going to provide you a lot more economic benefits. If you're talking to homeowners associations, feel free to reference the site, the same one I showed you before with the cost calculator. Right here is Neighbors Against Bad Bugs. That's the concept of neighborhoods pulling together, working together, and reducing their cost for treatment. And also this insecticides tab has all the information I talked about earlier about the insecticides. Okay, I'm done with thermal dashboard. Do you guys have any questions? Yes.
Are you suggesting that after the main wave passes by, that the level of insect population will be so low that it won't ever bump up again to be a real threat to the ash trees?
It's not that it couldn't bump back up, but it's likely that the trees remaining, there was not going to be enough of them to get the populations that we're seeing now. It's going to be a maintenance issue rather than an epidemic. Does that make sense?
I'm not sure I'm altogether clear on that.
Okay.
If the insects happen on that tree, they'll build up in that tree just as if there's been a lot of insects around. Is that correct?
Like I said, right now we have a lot of untreated trees in our rural areas, our woodlots and stuff, and those are just factories for emerald ash borer. We're not doing anything there, we're just letting them die. The ones that we're trying to save, we're protecting with insecticides. We're going to do that for 12 years or so, give or take, and then we can back off on those treatments and just do them every couple years as a maintenance issue, so there won't be anything in there generating. There might be a couple in there, but we're going to hit them with insecticides again in a couple years, and it'll knock that population back down. You follow? I can talk to you, give you more examples afterwards if you want to talk more about it.
So that's the theory that this may happen.
That's the theory. This isn't real world yet because we haven't had emerald ash for long. Yeah, exactly. But this is what we're hoping for.
But what is the theory is that if you stop treating all trees in Hamilton County, Ohio, after the last untreated tree has died, if we stop treating next year, the year after, eventually EAB would build up high enough again to kill off those trees. So they are going to require ongoing, periodic cleanup of some sort, but we don't know what the picture of that is going to be, and the research is ongoing. Everybody wants to know the answer to that.
Yeah, if you...
It's going to cost a lot less to maintain your tree. If you took good enough care of it, to maintain your trees through the infestation.
Exactly.
It's going to cost you way less to keep those trees. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if, like she said, you put all this money forth to save a tree and then just back off completely and it ends up dying, you're going to be very pissed off. So that's why you want to continually throw some insecticides in there to make sure that you would save that tree.
Two questions. One, what is your percentage of success rate for the treated tree? Do you have 100% success rate provided you continue on with the management program, or are you looking at 20, 40, 60%?
It depends on the condition of the tree, the time of year that you apply, the insecticide that you apply. There's a lot of variation. There are some numbers in this bulletin that'll give you some more percentages. Emamectin benzoate is very, very good. Up in Fort Wayne, every single tree that I treated back when I worked for my dad's company is still alive and looks great. That's one anecdotal piece of evidence, but statistically, emamectin benzoate's very good. Dinotefrin seems to be good. Imidacloprid does at certain size trees as long as you get it in there at the right time of year. Same with dinotefrin. There's limitations to every treatment right now, but it's based on those variables that I mentioned.
My second question is, are there other environmental impacts of using these insecticides on these trees? Are other insects being harmed?
Good question. Thank you for bringing that up because I was going to mention that. The great thing, we lucked out that it's the emerald ash borer and not the emerald maple. Well, no, I was trying to think of a bee-pollinated tree, apple, because ash trees are wind pollinated. We don't see native bees or honeybees visiting them. So that's one plus. The other thing to keep in mind when you are applying the neonic insecticides is that if you're spraying a bark spray, make sure that it's not that they didn't put a flower bed all the way around the ash tree and you're just dousing the flowers with that, because it will kill bees when they visit. Similarly with soil injections, if there are flowers around, the flowers could pick up that chemical and get into the nectar and the pollen. So be very careful and cautious when you are applying the neonic insecticides.
I just want to encourage people, when you ask a question, frame a question like that, also turn it around and think about what's the environmental impact of losing an entire genus. And so, what's the environmental impact of losing, say, if you have ash in the percentage of 40% in many communities in northeastern Illinois, because that was the tree that was being planted as those communities were being developed. The environmental impact of the increase in stormwater and particulate pollutants going into surface waters due to the loss of canopy there is, we don't even have a calculator for looking at that. And that's impacting a whole array of stuff that people aren't as warm and fuzzy about as they are about bees. And so always, if somebody stops you with a question like that, turn it around and ask, well, what's the environmental impact of doing nothing?
Also, Dan Herm did a lot. Yeah, it was Dan Herm looked at a lot of the native species that we would lose that solely live in ash trees or use ash trees a lot as a resource. And he did an awesome webinar for us at EAB University. It's a webinar series that I help run. It's with Amy Stone of Ohio State and Robin Osborne of Michigan State and Cliff Sadoff. And emeraldashboard.info, and you can go there and view all of the old webinars. And he does a really good job of showing what the impacts would be if we lost all the ash trees, like she just mentioned.
I think that we should mention too that when you consider the maintenance approach as a long-term solution, we do this for white bark birches, we do this in Japanese beetle on a lot of plants, just as a matter of fact. So if we're protecting ash long-term with a low dose, less frequent application, nothing that we don't do for the trees.
Good point.
There was a limit of how much you could neonics per acre. And in a lot of situations, when we have a lot of different contractors coming in the same neighborhood and treating them, or even if you have the same contractor treating the whole neighborhood, you're going to exceed that limit per acre before you treat all the trees. So how do you deal with that?
That is a potential. It just comes to, I guess, communication and maybe saying, okay, they're using soil drenches with, that's going to be imidacloprid dinotefuran. I'm going to go ahead and do the triage then, or the azadirachtin or the abermectin. You're just going to have to switch it up, I guess. I'm not going to never mind. I was going to say something, but I might get in trouble, so I'm not going to. We can talk later.
So it's unworkable and we get a lot of soil and water pollution that way. Make it
And one of the other issues that may or may not be sorted out as the EPA goes to review the neonics is that people that are practicing in the field get the whole point that really the limit for neonics and use of trees should be a DBH limit, should not be a per acre limit. Because it's not, the limits were created based on agricultural usage of broadcast application to surface soils where the water could wash away pretty quickly, before it got bound up to something or taken up by a plant. And so in fact, the environmental impact or environmental presence of the insecticide is very different from the trees. But that's, people that are writing rules and enforcing the rules right now are reading labels very strictly. So as Adam said, you use multiple products in the same landscape that is your workaround.
Anybody else?
Good job.
Alrighty. Like I said, I have 250 of these bulletins, so come take some off me so I don't have to carry them all the way back out to my car. It's a rather dense box. The next thing I just want to talk to you guys about is the Purdue Plant Doctor app series that we have developed over the past 3 or 4 years. I've been a part of working with all 4 of these great apps. Actually, oh shoot, I switched this over too quickly. Give me 1 second. Okay, so we have the Purdue Perennial and the Purdue Annual. We built those at the same time, but we separated them and made them each $1 because some people didn't want to have to buy both at the same time. Well, like we did with the Purdue Tree Doctor, we had both conifers and shade trees in there together. Some people don't care about one or the other, and that was one complaint. So we decided to separate them and make them $1 a piece rather than one app for $2. So you had options, but those have 154 disease, pests, and abiotic problems, 181 hosts between the two, and over 300 images. Similarly, the Tree Doctor has 181 problems, 62 hosts, and 360 images. The Tomato Doctor was our newest one. It has over 105 problems, 1 host, tomato, and 205 images. So they're pretty powerful diagnostic tools for very, very cheap. A lot of times we compare them. I should have done that. A lot of times when we try and show people about these apps, we show them some of the bigger textbooks that you would buy to diagnose plants, and some are like $300. This is $2 and it's in your pocket, and it's really user friendly as long as you have a smartphone. That's the one limitation, is it's a smartphone. It can be Apple or Android, not Windows. We don't have it on Windows. It can do tablets, like an iPad or an Android tablet. And iPods. We can do iPod. You can download them on iPods too with Wi-Fi.
This video has been part of the University of Kentucky Nursery Crops web series. For more information on the topics discussed, please contact your county extension office.